After an exhausting day at work, I pulled into the driveway close to midnight. The chilly air of early March embraced me as I stepped out of the car, each breath forming a small cloud in the cold. Our suburban neighborhood was cloaked in silence, the houses dark with most neighbors long asleep. All I wanted was to slip into bed beside my wife and let the day's stress melt away. As I approached the front door, I noticed that our house was completely dark. It wasn't unusual. Our home had a tendency to lose power occasionally. Fumbling with my keys, I unlocked the door and stepped into the familiar darkness. The quiet was almost palpable, broken only by the soft creak of the floorboards under my feet. I set my bag down in the hallway, contemplating a quick snack before bed. Fatigue won over hunger, and I decided to head upstairs. Just then, a vague unease settled over me. Perhaps it was the combination of silence and darkness, but something felt off. I shrugged it off, blaming it on my overworked mind playing tricks. Halfway up the stairs, I paused. The power outage seemed odd tonight. There hadn't been any storms or reasons for it. Maybe the breaker had tripped again. Deciding it was worth checking, I grabbed my keys and headed back toward the front door, aiming to inspect the breaker box outside. Stepping out into the cold night once more, I let the door close behind me. A soft click signaled that it had locked. Irritated, I made a mental note to fix the latch mechanism. Shivering slightly, I walked around to the side of the house where the breaker box was mounted. As I approached, something on the ground caught my eye. Our garden hose, which we always kept neatly coiled, was sprawled haphazardly beneath the breaker box. A knot tightened in my stomach. Kneeling down, I examined the breaker box and realized that the power hadn't simply gone out, someone had tampered with it. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. The uneasy feeling from earlier surged back with alarming clarity. Stepping around to the side of the house, I navigated the narrow path toward the breaker box. The cold seemed to intensify, each breath a visible puff in the air. As I drew closer, my foot caught on something unexpected. Looking down, I saw our garden hose sprawled out beneath the breaker box, uncoiled and tangled, a stark contrast to how we always kept it neatly wound. A sense of unease tightened its grip on me. I examined the breaker box and my suspicions deepened. The cover hung slightly ajar, and upon closer inspection I noticed that the main switch had been deliberately flipped. This wasn't a simple outage. Someone had tampered with our power. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the night air. Heart pounding, I rushed back to the front door. Reaching for the handle, I found it locked. Confusion gave way to alarm as I tried the other doors, each one secured. The realization hit me. I was locked out of my own house. Panic began to set in as I thought of my wife asleep upstairs, oblivious to any danger. Desperate, I peered through the living room window. Inside, two beams of light danced across the walls, flashlights held by unseen intruders moving through our home. The sight froze me in place. Intruders were inside, and my wife was alone with them. Fear surged through me, nearly overwhelming my ability to think clearly. I reached into my pocket for my phone, only to remember I'd left it on the kitchen counter. Cursing under my breath, I felt a wave of helplessness wash over me. No phone, no access to my house, and no immediate way to call for help. The quiet street offered no assistance. Every house was dark, their occupants likely asleep. I knew I couldn't stand there paralyzed by fear. I had to act swiftly to protect my wife. Gathering my wits, I considered my options, desperately trying to devise a plan that could alert her without drawing the intruder's attention. Panic surged through me as I stood outside, locked out while intruders roamed my home. I had to warn my wife. Scanning the ground, I picked up a handful of small stones from the garden. Aiming carefully, I tossed them one by one at our bedroom window. The first few missed, but finally I heard a faint tap as one connected. After several tense moments, a dim light appeared behind the curtains. The fabric parted slightly, and I saw my wife's face, eyes widening in confusion. I gestured urgently, putting a finger to my lips and motioning for her to hide. Recognition dawned on her features and she nodded before disappearing back into the darkness of the room. I could only hope she found a safe place. With no time to lose, I sprinted toward our neighbor's house. The cold air stung my lungs, each breath a sharp reminder of the urgency. Reaching their door, I knocked rapidly, the sound echoing in the stillness of the night. Seconds felt like hours before the door finally creaked open, revealing my neighbor's sleepy face. "I need help," I gasped, trying to keep my voice steady. "There are intruders in my house, and my wife is inside." Without hesitation, they ushered me in and handed me the phone. My fingers trembled as I dialed the police, explaining the situation as clearly as I could. They assured me that officers were on their way. As we waited, an unbearable weight settled on my shoulders. Guilt and fear intertwined, wrapping around me like a vice. I cursed myself for not being there to protect her, for leaving my phone behind, for every decision that led to this moment. My neighbor offered words of comfort, but they barely penetrated the haze of worry enveloping me. All I could do was stare out the window toward our house, searching for any sign of movement. The minutes dragged on, each one amplifying my anxiety. I felt utterly powerless, a bystander in the most critical moment of my life. The distant sound of sirens was both a relief and a torment. Help was coming, but would it be in time? From my neighbor's porch, I watched my house with a mix of dread and helplessness. The distant sound of sirens grew louder, each wail both a beacon of hope and a reminder of my inability to protect my wife. My heart pounded as I imagined what might be unfolding inside. Inside our bedroom, my wife had hidden herself in the closet moments after I signaled her. She later told me how she heard the floorboards creak as someone ascended the stairs. Each footstep was deliberate, the sound amplified in the stillness. The bedroom door opened slowly, its hinges emitting a faint squeak that set her nerves on edge. Through the narrow slats of the closet door, she glimpsed a shadowy figure entering the room. The intruder moved cautiously, a flashlight in one hand casting erratic beams across the walls. Then, the chilling sound of a gun being cocked sliced through the silence. He stood motionless, listening intently as if sensing another presence. She held her breath, pressing herself against the back of the closet. The fabric of hanging clothes brushed against her face, and she prayed that even her heartbeat wouldn't betray her. Minutes felt like hours as the intruder remained in the room, the tension nearly unbearable. Just as she feared the worst, the faint echo of sirens reached the intruder's ears. He hesitated for a moment before swiftly exiting the room. From my vantage point, I saw two figures dart from the back of the house, disappearing into the shadows just moments before the police arrived. The officers moved quickly, securing the area before allowing me to re-enter. I found my wife trembling but unharmed. Relief washed over me, but it was tainted by a profound sense of guilt. Our home was left ransacked, valuables missing, and the comfort we once felt within these walls was shattered. In the aftermath, we struggled to reclaim a sense of normalcy. Sleep was elusive, and every creak or distant noise set our nerves on edge. I grappled with the weight of what had happened, haunted by the thought that I had failed to protect the person I loved most. Our sanctuary had been violated, leaving us to confront not just the loss of possessions, but the fragility of the safety we had taken for granted.